Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition to the Boy Podcast. Everybody's doing well. We are back here on a Tuesday, which you know what that means. It is time to talk some Breaking Bad. We are talking season 5, episodes 5 and 6 this evening. It's really getting into the heart of things when it comes to the Mike, Jesse, and Walter partnership, including a new little entity that we get to know, a new character by the name of Todd, which I'm sure we'll dive into this evening. But before we talk some Breaking Bad, as always, I'll introduce my co-host, the ever handsome with that great mustache, the accountant extraordinaire, Shamus Fillmore. Shay, how are you this week?
Good, not too bad. Yeah, I've only got called Tom Selleck a couple times, so I just try to keep myself humble, and then other people call me pedo stash. So it all evens out in the end, I'm sure. But I'm glad we're both rocking the stashes to the very end. I don't know if you'll keep yours past November. I don't think my better half will let me, but that's to be determined. But no, I think things are well right now in my world. I don't like how it's dark at 4 o'clock, but that's for another
Mazel
day.
tov.
But yeah. No, how are things going with you?
Good. Good. Yeah. I got to see some junior hockey last weekend. NFL has been on crack, if you will. And that's always fun to talk about because it's so hard to understand who's going to win week in, week out, which is fun. So that's great. The NHL is at the 20 game mark, if you can believe it. And also, as you know, this week is a good week for myself because you have American Thanksgiving and there's football games, hockey games Friday throughout the day. So I love that. You get off work and you got something to watch. That's always great.
Yeah, not having to wait those extra couple hours after it's kind of a little treat. Go turkey.
Yeah. If only our country had Thanksgiving at the better time, in my opinion, but we got enough problems. Let's not focus on the Thanksgiving date. I'm sure Trudeau will figure something else out to screw up here in the not too distant future. But Shay, episodes 5 and 6 this evening. I really enjoyed these episodes. In particular, I think episode 5 is really, really interesting. Before we get introduced to him, but Jesse Plemons plays the character of Todd. And I think Jesse's a very talented actor. I've seen him in many things post Breaking Bad, including El Camino, the film, which I even think he's better in that than he was in the show. He's obviously a lot older in the movie, but what'd you make of the casting choice for Jesse Plemons to play Todd?
I think it's well. Yeah, no, I coming in, obviously the first time I watched this, I had no idea who he was, but he really kind of captivates his role, I find, as he moves along with it. And the more and more dirty secrets and the more you find out about him, obviously just adds to kind of his build. But I like you, I have seen him in other things. And, I always think back to this flick or this show, no matter what, as kind of his starting ground for his acting career. But yeah, anyone, do you have anything you know him by other than Breaking Bad and El Camino that people would know from him? Maybe it should put a name to the face.
The name is not coming to mind, but I saw him in a horror movie. And as you know, I'm not a huge fan of the genre, but he was in it. So I thought I'd watch it, but I was actually really, I liked the movie. I forget the name of it. So I didn't love it clearly, but
I'll look it up. You keep going.
Yeah. It was a horror movie and he's a creepy dude by nature. I find he's very good at being, like you said, a bit quirky, a little misunderstood, a little socially awkward as the character Todd, and also in this film. And I remember he was in a horror movie and he played a serial killer, and he ended up being a killer regardless. But I enjoyed that horror. It probably didn't get that much fanfare, but I remember watching it a few months back.
Yeah, no. And like you said, like these 2 episodes are great. 5 is a staple. And what makes it so different from other seasons, Juggy, is I think you'll agree, where there's 16 episodes, it kind of breaks out more evenly into a 5-5-5 basis. So
Right.
instead of having like a halfway point, this feels more like a third. And this is, there's a huge event happening in this 5th episode, and then obviously we move to 10th and then the 16th. But it just makes it so much more interesting because you just get more of a focal point coming from the season, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing about seasons and, episode totals. I think you look at Netflix shows, they always like 10 episodes. I think of Ozark, they have been 10 episode shows, which I think can be difficult to really wrap up your story. Breaking Bad, like you said, has been around 12 to 13 in the first, after season 1, which was very short. But I like 16 episodes as well. A lot happens, like you said, in between 5 and 10. That is very different from the last 5 episodes of the show when it comes to characters and things of that nature. This episode starts, we get a little kind of a foreshadowing, which we like to see in the show. This little kid on a dirt bike in the middle of the desert. And we get no real context as to why, but we see him stop the bike, pick up a tarantula, and put it in a mason jar. What did you make it? What'd you make of the start of the episode?
Remind me of my brother whipping around on his dirt bike back in the day. But no, it was funny, and you could tell this kid is probably a little different in the sense that no normal 14, 15-year-old just goes and picks up a spider and kind of bottles it up. But in the same sense, it kind of gives a vast location of where, I guess you could say the episode takes place, because it is really just in the deadbeat of the desert. And yeah, I guess in that sense, it's kind of showing you the landscape of what's going to or not what's going to happen, but where things take place. And obviously we learn later on that this kid has a big part of it.
Yeah. It gets a lot darker from here, but yeah, at the time, I like the starts to episodes like this because it makes you think a little bit about how this character is going to be incorporated, because it's always that they're incorporated. I remember we talked about, I think it was end of season 2, we saw an episode end, I believe, with a Better Call Saul sign. And he obviously, the next title of the next show was Better Call Saul, the next episode. So I like that personally. I think you see it, and it's rare in other shows, Shay. You don't see it. Like Ozark, they've never done it. I just started watching Yellowstone. They don't incorporate it there, and these are 2 good shows. But I think this is a really interesting technique that more directors, I think, should employ moving forward.
Yeah, it makes your show stand out a little bit in the sense that you're kind of like, oh, it really gives you that that shock factor, like, oh, like that's how they're going to play that into this.
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves you so much time to forget about that for opening scene, because there's so much going on in this episode. When it does kind of come back, you're just like, oh shit, like this is why we were shown this in the first place. And it is true. That's a lot of great directors don't incorporate this in their work, but obviously Vince Gilligan and his crew definitely did a great job of kind of being a standout, because I don't know any of it. I couldn't tell you another show that does this.
No, me either. And it's strange because of how successful this show was with their multiple Emmy wins and things of that nature. You think somebody, it's a copycat league, as we like to hear in the world of sports. Well, I think shows can be similar. I think Ozark in the drug aspect is very similar to Breaking Bad, but nevertheless, they didn't take everything yet. But season 4 is coming in January, so we will wait and see. So we pivot to Walt, and we remember at the last episode, Walter and Skylar had this very powerful scene where she basically said, "You are the threat to this family. I'll launder your money, but the children are at Hank and Marie's. They are never back in this house with you here, because you will eventually kill them. You had a gun to your head a month ago." So he goes to see Hank at the DEA, and he kind of plays off this sob story. Oh, Skylar doesn't love me anymore. And he's doing his best fake crying bit. And as we know, Hank is not the most empathetic person in the world, and he kind of tries to get out of that conversation as quickly as possible.
Yeah, he basically says, "Oh, like I'll go get you coffee and give you a moment to collect yourself, aka, stop fucking crying."
Yeah.
and Walter's just kind of like, "Oh yeah, I just need a second." So, if we can recap from last week, Hank is kind of the big boss now. He accepted that role as kind of the head of the DEA within New Mexico. So what he's doing, he's kind of got this, office away from everybody else, and he leaves. And Walter basically, the minute the door slams, wipes the tears off and kind of puts on his Heisenberg smirk again. Imports some kind of device into his computer, basically generating all his documents, goes right through them. And then also, he's got this bug, and he's like, where am I going to put this? And he grabs a picture of Hank and Marie that's sitting on the desk, puts it in the back of that, basically like hiding it. And then before, he can kind of put it back on the desk, Hank walks back in, and, he's just like, oh, you guys are cute. You guys are a happy couple. And basically kind of shaming himself for what he and Skylar are not.
Yeah. And they kind of have this coffee, and this is another Walter shady move to his brother-in-law who does care for him, and on an emotional level, even if he's not the greatest at expressing that. I can feel him, because that's something I struggle with from time to time. But so he has like you said, he has a bug in Hank's office. He can listen to everything he says, and they have access to his files. So we pivot to our man, Mr. Ehrmantraut, aka Mike, and he has kidnapped Lydia Quayle, who works for Magical Electromotive. You remember, she was really the middle woman, if you will, to Gustavo Fring, helping him get methylamine, get him different means to run the meth business. And she had a hit out on Hank, and he believes that in the past episode, she put a tracking device on a shipment of methylamine so that she would no longer have to be involved in this process, in effect, getting out, if you will. And he basically brings her to the table, and he tells her that she's going to be reading off a script or he will kill her on the spot.
Yeah, he makes it pretty intimate that he's like, okay, I'm going to shoot you in the head with a pistol. And he makes her repeat it back. And basically what this is basically Lydia, they're trying to catch Hank basically to admit that he was the one who put it under the barrel, and it wasn't somebody else. As we know, in the last episode, Walter had this great plan of basically finding it out, and this was it was basically capture Lydia and get Hank to either confess or basically proving that it was Lydia who was the one who was planning these devices underneath the methylamine. So she calls, she does a good job, and after that they kind of trace Hank's call to see if it was true or not.
Right. So Hank calls the Houston DEA office and says, like, did you guys put a tracking device on a shipment of methylamine? And he goes, well, the guy's like, well, how'd you know about that? And he goes, are you kidding me? You did this on the outside, like where people can see it? Like, this little woman figured it out. And he goes, how many did you do it? Well, all of them. And yeah. Hank is livid because it is amateur hour. I mean, a woman with no police training, with very limited experience, has picked up on it, and in effect, they are onto it now. And she looks at Mike and she says, "Ha, see, I told you I wasn't lying. Screw you, you're gonna kill me, you bastard." But he's not off the scent of eliminating a potential threat.
Yeah, obviously bad blood. And he tells both Walter and Jesse, basically says, this girl had a hit on me. She's dangerous. And, we got to get rid of her because, it's either she's going to rat or she's going to kill us is essentially the vibes Mike's trying to lay down. But, Jesse's like, we need her for the methylamine. We can't just eliminate her. And as we know now, all the barrels that they wanted to take all are traced. So they're basically eliminating the warehouse altogether. But Lydia pipes up and says, I know where you can get a sea full of methylamine, no problem. And this is kind of where the master plan of this episode kind of gets into place.
Right. So she's like, I don't want to talk to Mike. Like, go away. So Mike and Jesse go, and she sits down with Walter. And little does she know who she's dealing with. It's probably better to deal with Mike. Actually, I know it's better to deal with Mike.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Because I don't know about you, Shay, but I don't think Mike could kill her. I really don't. We haven't seen him kill a woman yet. And I don't think he could kill a woman knowing that he'd be leaving her little daughter without a parent.
So you think that was bluff then? You think he's bluffing when he's down there kind of saying like, yeah, we still need to get rid of her?
I just find it hard to believe because we see him around his granddaughter already, including the next episode. His daughter-in-law is a single mother because we actually learn on Better Call Saul about how his son passed away, but he would be, making this little girl in effect an orphan.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good point. I thought at one point he, if he felt betrayed, he might have been able to do it. I think Lydia's a little, not that she's sketchy, but she's so uptight that she could become a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Walter kind of sits down with her, and the first thing she says is, you got to promise not to kill me. And Walter's like, oh, I can't make any fucking promises. And it's like, do you have kids? And Walter's like, well, whatever. Yeah, I have kids. But Lydia's trying to probably get an emotional connection going with Walter. Little does she know, Walter just has he has no filter. He would kill her just for shits and giggles, probably just because she's part of it. But she does open up. She says, there's this train that, methylamine comes to us. It goes to and from, but there is basically a blind spot. And, you can rob the train and basically, get rid of the conductor and the engineer, or you can, pay them off or do whatever. But you have enough methylamine here to cook forever if you were to get this done.
Right. So yeah, like you said, it's a lot of methylamine. So she sends him she gives him the whereabouts of it, where it goes, and basically it goes through the desert. And the one blind spot, if you will, is kind of this little bridge, if you will. It's a small little traverse where that's where there's no signal. There's hardly any, you can't call anybody out there. So it's in effect a dark zone. And the problem is they don't want to kill the conductor, because that you kill the conductor, you kill the engineer. Well, that's a red flag. You're going to get looked into. If you leave them there handcuffed and duct taped, okay, well, you get to see a person's height, weight, what have you. That's still a potential problem. So they think this is not going to work. But Jesse, through it all, again, Jesse kind of came up with the last plan. He pipes in and says, what if we rob the train without anybody knowing?
Yeah. Again, it's kind of in between Mike and Walter's bickering. You kind of get Jesse kind of pipes in with a brilliant idea, stepping up in his role as kind of this partner of the trio now. And, you're kind of thinking like, how the hell, like how would they be able to rob a train? Like, what are they going to use, a helicopter or something so it's really interesting. I believe the next scene, they're out in the desert where they plan on doing it in this effective dark zone, like you mentioned, and looking around, they kind of, they're on the tracks and they start walking until they hit this bridge that you mentioned. And they're like, yep, we'll do it here. And we'll make shit happen, essentially. And what they do is they start digging. They dig not on the rails itself, but they dig right beside it. And we see them imploding two kind of giant barrels big
barrels. Yeah. Like an oil drum.
Exactly. And they're bringing them in, and you're like, what the hell? And we find out that they're putting these drums in the ground kind of to stay hidden. And what's their master plan here, Juggy? You're still, as you're watching this, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's super, innovative. It's super complex because you see them put a barrel in and you're like, okay, they're both empty. But then in comes our buddy Todd, and they start filling one barrel full of water. So, you're thinking, okay, why the hell are they doing this? Well, essentially what the plan is the day of, they're going to have the train stop on the track. So a truck's going to break down and the train will have to stop and help with the truck so they can keep going. While the train is stopped, they are going to take pipes, put them into the barrel and transfer the methylamine into the oil drum, if you will. After the methylamine has been taken from the train, they need something to put in the methylamine so that the weight distribution is not thrown off. That'll be a red flag right away. So what they plan to do is put water in the tank. So when it arrives at the destination in Houston, Texas, it's not, well, somebody stole the methylamine. China just sent a batch that's extremely watered down, and it's China's fault. There's no robbery. There's no red flag. They get out of there with their hands clean.
Yeah, so even though they're not stealing the whole tank, Juggy, they're stealing enough to be sufficient for a long time. So
yes,
it is really a great plan in the sense, but obviously it's got a lot of factors into it. And one of which is getting the train to stop, which we see is kind of a funny scene, a little later in the episode.
Yeah. So what they have done before is they've employed Todd, who works for Vamano's Pest. He's kind of been the only one to talk to them so far. He addresses them as sir. He knows his name is Walter White. He calls him Mr. White. And he's excited. He wants to do it. His job is going to be to get on top of the train, basically unscrew the top of it so that they can start pouring the meth into the barrel. So he's a big part of the plan, and he's excited to be, on the team, so to speak.
Yeah. He's, we see later on, he's like, I want to be part of this. Like he wants to be part of this crew. So whatever he's got going on with Memos, the pest company, I guess, he wants more. He wants more role into, this kind of drug business that they've got going on. And this is his intro, really, is being able to do this, because clearly he's not just some Nimrod that, he's not a badger. He's not a skinny. No. Like he's clearly got some skills and some some drive, you could say, to make shit happen.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. He's not an idiot by any means. And he knows what he's doing. Before we get to the awesome heist scene, which is great, throughout this is a small part of the episode, but it's worth mentioning. Walter Jr. is having a very difficult time not being at home. He's talking very little to Hank and Marie. He's not at their home very often. He's very aloof. And there's this scene where he comes home and Skylar's knocking on his door. He won't let her in. But Walter arrives. She says, he's in there. You go deal with this. This is your problem anyway. And in essence, Walter kicks him out of the house without an explanation. And, Junior's pretty fed up and he's sick of this shit, to quote him.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of giving you like second season vibes in the sense that his parents aren't getting along, but they're not exactly telling him why. So obviously he doesn't understand. So he's frustrated and he's kind of taking it out on them. It's funny that he just kind of walks into his own house again and, just kind of plops down like, hey, I'm home. But, obviously has no context of what's going on with Skylar and Walter. You could say that it is a dangerous sense because Skylar's kind of unhinged at this point. Like she really doesn't care. She was like borderline Elkie / kind of smoking darts inside. Yeah. But Walter's driven her to that way, so we can't really fault her for that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's tough because I can understand his frustration. You're not allowed in your own home. You don't know why. You're not given. It's not like he's a 4-year-old kid. He's 17. He's a year away from graduating. I think this is a failure of parenting because they're not going to tell them their father's cooking meth. But I do think you can say you're having problems with your marriage, and that might be hard to accept for a kid. but I do think it's better than just shunning the guy and giving him nothing, because I would be frustrated as well.
Yeah, and at this point for him, doesn't really seem like a timeline. It's not like, oh, like in a week we'll have this wrapped up and we'll be
Right.
better. He's just kind of like, well, is this going to go on for ages? So, if you're the parents in this situation, if you're Walter, you're thinking, well, maybe I should just leave. And, even if Skylar takes the kids back, well, they're not kind of at Hank and Marie's and they can be in their own home.
Yeah. So he eventually goes home, and, Walter's like, just, she's smoking cigarettes, like he said. And she's like, so what's up with you? Like, you burying some bodies today? Cause he's got dirt on his clothes. And in a cocky way, he just says, no, robbing a train. And he goes to bed.
He's getting more open about what he's doing, because I think he's just, it's just part of his life now. Before it was hidden, it was in the shadows.
Yeah.
And, he had to keep it from everything. But Skylar knows so much now. And, she's so mad at him that I think it's out of spite. He's just like, yeah, I'm just going to tell you, because that's not even worth lying to your face anymore.
No, yeah, he's just, I don't care. Like, yeah, what does it hurt me for you to know this? Because, yeah, so he's very flamboyant. He's very cocky about this. So we get to the day of the heist, and to stop the train, you obviously need to the train to stop. Saul's Goodman's man, aka Bill Burr, the comedian, drives a pickup truck, and he drops it right in the middle of the tracks, right at the edge of the bridge, pops the hood, and we see the train coming, and he's just waving his arms like, help, help, help. And the train is forced to pull the e-brake, and he's basically like, just died right there. And you guys know anything about engines? Oh, of course you do. They're engineers.
That's a funny scene. Yeah. And in the meantime, the boys are kind of underneath this bridge, the boys being Todd, Walter, and Jesse, and they're kind of getting ready. The man, I guess the scout, guy with the bird eye view, is Mike. He's looking over everything going on with Bill Burr and the engineer, the conductor, and then he can also see everything basically going on. So they basically lined it up so the exact same, that the tank that would be there, which is part of Lydia's thing, she had to know exactly where the tank was going to be. That's exactly where they ended up digging, these tubes, and they've got enough line to get everything in. And Mike's kind of scouting it all out, because he's got to know exactly when these conductors are going to get back in the train and leave. So as soon as it goes, Jesse, like you said, he gets under the train. He starts basically opening it up, getting the methylamine to latch in, and he's going to be doing that. Well, I keep calling. It's funny. I keep wanting to call him Jesse because his name is Jesse Plemons. Todd goes up, and he's pouring the water inside to replace it. And so it's going pretty smoothly for quite a while. This engine's not working, partially because Bill Burr's got this little flit underneath the thing. And, every time he starts it, it basically starts, it sounds like it's flooding, but it's really just him not allowing it to start.
Right. So he's like, yeah, you want to push? He goes, oh, might as well give it a shot. And I don't think he puts the car in neutral, even though he says, give you a little more credit, but they're pushing with all their might. He's just there, like, leaning on it, like making it harder to push, which is funny. But a problem arises. This indigenous man drives up with this big, Ford souped up truck. And he goes, hey, like, I can give you a hand. I can push you, like, with my front end. And he goes, the engineer and the conductor are like, yeah, that'd be great. And he goes, no, I don't want to ruin your truck. Like, there's no big deal. And the conductor's like, okay, he's offering, like, let's go. And, Mike basically tells the boys, like, abort. This is not going to take long. We got to go.
Yeah. And at this point, we're probably at 600. And their goal, I guess, is 920 gallons, Walter says, which is hilarious because he exceeds that. But he says, that's what we're going to go aim for, 920. You got to count for spillage, all that jazz. And Walter, he's the one with basically the mic. He's got Mike in his ear, and he goes, no, like, he tells the boys, keep going. And Mike at this point, Mike Ehrmantraut is just getting more and more upset, being like, you pull those fucking guys off there, they're gonna get some serious harm.
Right. So eventually the truck's pushed off. The train is starting, and as they get to 100,000 gallons, if you will, Walter goes, "Okay, let's go." So you see them just panic. Jesse is underneath the train, as you mentioned. He's on the tracks. Todd's at top. He's screwing everything back in, and as the train is starting, Jesse is forced to lay flat on the tracks to avoid it crushing him and killing him in a matter of seconds. And Todd jumps off the train before it gets into a good start. So they do pull it off, but it did come down to the wire.
And it just shows like Walter clearly had a plan in place for 920, and he got well over that. He got right to the 1,000 mark. And that just kind of shows he got greedy. He's like, oh, like we can do more. You know what I mean? Yeah, okay. We have enough, but we can keep going and we can do more and more. So it just kind of speaks to his character and where he was at. And of course, how Mike feels about Walter not sticking to plans. But nevertheless, like you said, boys got it. And, it seemingly went off without any problems.
So they're celebrating, they're high-fiving. And through all the euphoria, as they're about to put everything away, they look out about 20 feet from them, and sitting there is the little kid on the dirt bike. And they're all just kind of like, oh, crap. But the kid doesn't drive away. He waves at them. So it's almost signaling like, it's okay. Like, hey, hi, like I just, it's good to see you. And Todd waves back. But in truly one of the most gripping scenes of the show, in my opinion, he opens up his coat, pulls out a revolver, and as Jesse yells, "No!" he shoots the kid right in the heart and kills him dead.
End of episode. It is gripping, because it's something that comes up more and more throughout the show, as we see, like we had Andrea's brother. Yeah, obviously he was shot in the back in the playground. We have Brock, who was really sick. He looked like he was on the brink of death. So, killing kids is part of the show, but to see it happen, because we don't really see any of those ones happen, but to actually witness it is kind of like, whoa. And obviously it's from a character we hardly know anything about, but obviously it speaks a lot to that character that he's just willing to do that kind of on a whim, really.
Yes. This is really our big introduction to Todd. So our first introduction to him is that he's willing to kill a kid. We've seen Jesse. Walter poisoned Brock, but I truly believe he did not think the child was going to die. That does not excuse the action, but it's not as if he killed a kid in plain sight. He shot a child. So what have we seen throughout this show? They get rid of bodies, you could say the old-fashioned way, if you will. So the next episode starts, it's really kind of an uncomfortable scene too, because you see them, the truck's full of dirt in the dump truck, and they pull out the dirt bike, and it's this montage of Todd breaking it down. They put it in a bin that they put the acid in. After that's in a bin, Mike grabs another one, and Todd jumps in, starts digging through the dirt, and you see the hand of the child. So clearly they're going to dispose of the body using acid like they did for Crazy 8, like they have for Victor. And Mike and Walter, you could tell, are really unsettled by this. In particular, Mike, in my opinion, the way he acted through this scene, he didn't really look right. And Jesse did not take part in any of this.
Yeah, and you could consider it more uncomfortable maybe than the actual shooting itself, knowing that you kind of have to clean up afterwards. And, anytime a child's involved in something like that, obviously is pretty tough to watch, really. And, Jesse's kind of over by the trucks. He's having a dart. And, what does Todd do? He just goes over, has a dart. He goes, oh, you never told me that this stuff smelled like cat piss.
Yeah.
And Jesse's kind of like, what the fuck? And then, Todd's like, fuck. He's basically like, shit happens.
Yeah.
And Jesse turns around and socks him right in the face and basically says, we got to do something about this fucking idiot.
Yeah. And this also tells you something about Todd and his social skills. The fact that he doesn't know how to interact with Jesse. He just punches, he just says, oh, shit happens. And he doesn't know Jesse as well as the other two, but the fact that he didn't partake in the cleanup would tell you that he's not okay with this, that he's having a hard time processing it. And like you said, they have this meeting, and it starts with Todd being in there. And like you say, he's like, hey, I would die for this team. I want to be a part of it. I got connections. My uncles know guys in prison that can help. And I'd do it again. I think it was the right decision. He could have ratted us out in 5 seconds. And they basically say, okay, Todd, go take a breather. And Jesse wants to have his say with his two partners.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Todd basically goes, it was us or him. And, in any sense, and, the kid probably knew nothing. He could have thought that those guys were working, he thought they were just out there working, and he was just waving at them just because, not knowing what's going on. And, Walter says, we have 3 options here.
Mm-hmm.
A, we take old Todd off the payroll.
Yeah.
And, kind of risk him knowing everything now, and knowing that he could clearly just kind of flap his lips about this to anybody, including the DEA. B, we take Todd out, which they all kind of go, it's probably not the way to handle it. Or C, they keep Todd on the payroll, and it says we gotta vote. We see this kind of funny voting system at the beginning where it's like the 3 of them. So obviously they have to come to a 2 to 3 vote, and both Mike and Walter kind of say, well, we're gonna go with option C. We're gonna keep Todd on the payroll just to keep him quiet, essentially.
Right. Jesse's pissed. He hates Todd, and he'll have more reason to hate Todd as the show goes on, which is a good read from him. But Mike agrees with Walter, but he tells Todd, you're staying on. He goes, great. But he grabs him by the chin, throws him against the wall, and he says, if you ever bring a gun to an operation that I run again without telling me, you'll never breathe another breath in your life. And basically says to Todd, you are on thin ice.
Yeah. And then Todd goes out and plays with the tarantula that the kid had. And you're getting the sense that Todd, not only is he kind of maybe a psycho, but he's also a strange kind of eerie dude.
Yeah. And not only that, Shay, keeping the tarantula is like, like a trophy, when you see a serial killer, when they keep jewelry or,
locks of hair.
Right. This is something to me that signifies that. And we see the tarantula in the movie as well, which is unsettling. But what do you
I'll be honest with you. I never watched the movie. I was waiting until I'm going to rewatch the whole thing. Obviously we are. And then I'm going to watch the movie right after the last episode, just kind of put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, Todd's a big part of the movie, which is interesting. But what did you make of the decision? Do you agree with it, or would you have taken a different path?
Oh, I mean, I think you definitely could have dealt with it at least more. You could have dealt with it with some sense. It was done off a whim, and one thing Todd says is, oh, well, he could have just drove away. Like, if he got away, then who knows what could have happened. But in the same sense, the kid really didn't look like he knew anything. He was just waving out of just being nice. So I think it was the wrong call. I think they could have just kind of told him to shoo, like, we're working here, kid. But I don't know. He saw their faces, which is another part that I didn't like. I mean, not that they had to use masks, but maybe if they did, then they wouldn't have come to this kind of issue.
Right. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Knowing the group, I probably would have killed him.
Really?
Yeah. It's very, especially for Mike, he's got an uncontrollable variable, if you will, in Walter. He knows how crazy this guy is and that he cannot be controlled. If you have a second person that is completely unorthodox, that is somebody that you cannot predict. I like controllable variables. I like constants. I don't like variables. And I think to have two variables on your team with only one constant, that doesn't bode well for me as a business person.
Right. I thought we were talking about the kid, by the way. I forgot that we were talking about the
I would not have killed the kid. I would have at least had a conversation with the kid. Especially a person that's not in the group pulling the trigger that is completely out of bounds.
Yeah. I would probably would have killed Todd. You can't keep him alive in the same sense you can't keep him on the payroll. But yeah, we'll see what all kinds of problems. You also have to take in mind he kind of flexes on this, and this is kind of a little foreshadowing, but he flexes on this. Oh, I've got connections in prison with my uncle. And
yeah,
we'll see
that
later.
becomes a big part coming up. And yeah, they are, like you said, the sectors of the season, they are a big part of the back half of season 5. So the DEA is tracking Mike. We've heard this in the past episode where they're tracking him wherever he goes. And there's this really funny scene where Mike is in the park with his granddaughter. And we see Gomi and this other DEA agent. They are watching him from afar. And Mike is fucking with them. He goes to a trash can and puts a piece of paper under it. And they're like, oh, it's a dead drop. It's a dead drop. And he leaves with his granddaughter. Gomez walks over, flips over the garbage can. And on the note, it just says, fuck you.
Yeah, funny to say. It's kind of if you ever watch The Town, I guess Ben Affleck does this to John Hamm, the same sense, kind of like I know what you're trying to get at. I know what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, this is funny, but we also know that Mike's still red hot on DEA, which is not good for our guys, because we know that, this becomes a big issue. They work pretty tightly together, and obviously they got to find a way to fix it.
Yeah, and he goes home and he says that they're going to keep a tail on him 24/7. And even though he's a pro, even pros slip up. So Mike is very much in hot water at this point. Let's move it to Skylar. She goes to Marie's to see Holly. Basically, Flynn is not there, but she's excited to see her. And she starts crying. And she says, if she told her things, that Marie would never talk to her again. Such bad things. Yeah. And Marie goes, Skylar, wait. Like, I know. Like, you can't keep beating yourself up over the affair. Like, hey, like, he's a good looking guy. Like, I don't blame you. And Skylar is completely puzzled because Walter did not have the wherewithal to tell her that he told Marie that she was having an affair. And this did not bode well.
Yeah, pretty upset she was. But in the scene, just going back, do you think Skylar, the first time watching this, you're like, holy shit, like this could be it? Like she might actually spill the beans, because she does come, in my opinion, very close to kind of breaking down. She's in this mental state where she's not healthy, and she just kind of probably just wants an escape to tell somebody because she can't tell anybody. Right.
Yeah. I mean, the only person, if we remember, that she's told is her lawyer, but her lawyer can't do anything because your attorney-client privilege, you can't, So, yeah, I kind of think like she was very close, but, Marie had to jump into the conversation and stop that potential, that life-changing news that would have, helped down the line. Pivot to a cook. Walt and Jesse are watching TV, and the news comes on about the boy. We learn he's 12. His name's Drew Sharp. They're expanding their search, knowing that they're not going to find anything. but Jesse starts crying. And Shay, every season that we see him, his mental health really take a toll. It's a life-changing scene. We've seen him when he starts on drugs again, when Jane died, different things happen. And I think this was, obviously we see what happens down the line, but just foreshadowing, I think him crying, having this moment, this was another one for every season where his mental health just took another kick to the groin.
Yeah, well, this is something you brought up a long time ago, and it's, on the outside, Walter seems like the better person, maybe perspective as the teacher / chemist. But on the inside, we know that Jesse is a much better person in the sense that he's got compassion and he cares. He cares for other people. If you think back to when he took care of that kid in the crack house, he cared for Brock quite a bit. He was morally upset about killing Andrea's brother. So he's got a moral compass like no other, and obviously he cares a lot for kids. So this kind of struck a bell with him, and turned him to, we'll talk about it in a second, to go a different path. But yeah, in this moment, he's upset, he's frustrated, and Walter somewhat comforts him, but not really, in the sense that he's like, okay, well, we're not going to do anything about it, but he basically says, oh, like, yeah, it was a huge loss, but look how much methylamine we have. If we got $300 million in front of us if we just keep cooking.
Right. And he says to go home. And what really amplifies this for me is Jesse goes upstairs to get changed. And when he comes back down, Walt is whistling. And it's whistling like, it's not just whistling to pass the time. It's kind of like an arrogant whistle. It's kind of like, it's so nonchalant. It's like he didn't even care about their conversation.
Yeah, it bothers him, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he gets a phone call, and we learn it's from Mike, because after the cook, Walter goes to the garage and Jesse and Mike are there. And Mike basically says, I'm out. The DEA is on my ass, and they're going to figure it out eventually. It's going to be a problem. So I'm just going to take my money and get out while I can. And he said, that's Walt. Yeah, good idea, Mike. It's too bad. I guess you'll have to update Jesse on how to handle distribution. But before he can even get that, Jesse pipes in and says, actually, I'm out too.
And Walter, yeah, unlike the reaction from Mike, Walter he's flabbergasted. He's like, are you stupid? Like, we have so much money to make here. We have so much to do. He's like, how could you just walk away from something like this? And Mike kind of pops in and says, I have a guy from, I think it's Phoenix. He's got a guy from Phoenix, and he's going to give us $5 million each for our third of the methylamine. And you don't have to like it, but it's going to happen, Walter.
Yeah, and pretty good little payday. Walt's like, it's worth $300 million. Like, and he goes, $5 million, we're out. Like, that's more money than we could ever think about making. And Walt I think the money's pissing him off, but he's also like, you're selling to my competition? Like, are you kidding me? And at the same time, Walt also says, yeah, you cannot sell my third. You can sell your guys' third, 2/3 of it, but I'm keeping mine. I want to keep cooking.
And then to their respect, they say, okay, that's fine. You do what you got to do. But we're both done. And the next scene kind of pivots to, they're out kind of in the middle of the desert again. They're on the road, and it's just Jesse and Mike, and this SUV pulls up, and these two guys get out. One kind of, we know, is the boss. I kind of forget his name. It's going over my head right now. Declan. Yeah, that's right. Declan. He's like, oh, like, perfect. Like, this is great. Like, I'll buy, I'll give you 10 million for your, all of your methylamine. And they're kind of like, we're not giving you all of it. We're giving you 666. And yeah. And he's like, well, at least the blue stuff will be off the market. And they're kind of just quiet for a second. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't even get the blue stuff off the market. And it's, kind of realizing now, he's like, okay, well, this is making more sense. You guys got an extra partner, and he's not backing down.
Right. So he says, no deal. Like, I'm not doing this, buying all this methylamine when that blue stuff's still on the market. So a problem for Jesse and Mike. Jesse decides to rectify it. He calls Walter. Walter says, "No, come on over. Like, don't matter. Just come on, stop in." It's like they're old pals. And Jesse stops in. He says, "Can you please give up your third? Like, we can't make the sale. I want out. Mike wants out. Like, it's $5 million each. A year ago, you couldn't even think about making $5 million bucks." But Walter and his iconic line, Jesse, you asked me if I was in the money business or the meth business. I'm in neither. I'm in the empire business.
So cringy. But no, I mean, it is a classic line from Walter. But then he continues to go, when I was younger and I was in college, I started a business with two other people who we know as Gretchen and
Elliot.
And, we started a company, Gray Matter. And back then, things got complicated, meaning that they started hooking up after Walter didn't want to get serious with her or whatever. And, they offered me $5,000 for my share of the company. And I said, 5,000. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that. And he goes, you know what that's worth today, Jesse? And Jesse goes, millions. And Walter goes, millions with big old B in front of it.
Yeah, 2.16 billion. And that's a hard one to take. I will admit, from Walter's point of view, that is a tough kick in the pills. He said he looks up the share, the stock price every week. And while they're in the middle of this conversation, Skylar walks in and Jesse's, "Oh shit." He goes, "Oh, hey, Mrs. White, like, so good to see you. You have a lovely home." And this is a cringy conversation when we're in middle school and you're at a friend's house for the first time. You don't know what to say to the parents. And, Walt's like, "Why don't you just stay for dinner?" And just like, no, I don't think so. And he goes, no, stay. Like, we got no plans, right, honey? And she's just like looking at him like, "Are you kidding me?" And she goes, no plans. And we are prepping for one of the most uncomfortable meals of all time.
Yeah. This, and I'm sure you'll agree, Dougie. This is kind of Walter's way of saying, you don't want my kids here. Well, I'm gonna invite all my degenerate friends in here, Skylar.
My pseudo son.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get my other kids in here.
Yeah.
Fuck my real kids. But no, and then they kind of sit down, and you can tell it's just uncomfortable. Jesse's like in the middle. And he's like, "Oh, this food is great. You're a great cook, Mrs. White." And she goes, "I just bought this at the fucking store, kid. Like, yeah. I don't know what you want me to tell him." And the whole time she's like, "Yeah, well, I'm not good." And he kind of starts going on this tangent about frozen food and how it never turns out the way he looks on the box. And then all of a sudden, Skylar goes, "Oh, what else did you tell? What else did Walter tell you about me?" And he goes, "Oh, just good things, all good things." And she delivers a line I'll never forget. And goes, did you tell him about the affair?" And Jesse just goes,
he's kind of like eating string beans, and he's like,
yeah. I love how he's eating string beans like two whole at a time too.
Yeah.
He's not cutting them up whatsoever.
Yeah, and he just kind of like looking around, and she's just like, "Can I be excused?" And she leaves the table, and it's awesome, the scene. Like, he's talking about mac and cheese for like 20 minutes about how it's just never turns out right, and I love it so much. So after this meal, learning that Walter kind of assumes that Mike's going to try to take the meth because he knows he can't sell it. So he gets there and he says, Walter, I knew you were coming here." And he kind of says, "Come with me." And they sit down in the boardroom for the night. He says, "I'm selling this. It's for the better of all three of us. There's nothing you can do about it." And he says, "Before I do that, I got to go see the cops." So he takes some ratchet straps basically and ties Walter to the heater.
Yeah, and it's this funny montage where Walter's trying to get away, and first he opens the door that's right beside him, can't reach anything. Then he sees this coffee bowl, and he's like, "Okay, if I can get this, probably can cut it, make a little shiv or something and cut my way out of this. And he gets the wire to it. It's not in reachable way. So, but he does find the wire for this coffee machine, and he's going to pull it, and then it's going to come towards him. But he pulls it, and it pretty much goes in the opposite direction across the room, and he's kind of like, fuck. But he's got the wire in his hand, and he's like, Walter, being the brilliant chemist that he is, bites down on the wire, pulls it out, and then he kind of gets the coils and everything going on in between. And he kind of makes this little laser, and he's going to laser this wire, this thing right from his hand off of it. And sure enough, he does it, Juggy, but it does not look fun, we'll say.
No, he's basically burning himself to get free.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it looked painful. And so he's doing that, he's free, and all the meth is sitting there. Before Mike can get to figure it out here, he meets with Gomi and Hank, meets with the DA, with Saul, of course, right there with him. And he, Saul says that he's going to be throwing a suit on the DEA for stalking, for harassing his client, for doing nothing wrong, threatening him, and that, he's going to have a temporary restraining order on the DEA, and, just to give him some, and harassment on a senior citizen. And, they're laughing it off, saying that's never going to hold up in court. Saul throws in this line about a fake judge who, hates police harassment. And basically Mike learns he's going to have about 24 hours before they figure out the jig is up, and that, he has the DA on his ass.
Yeah. And Mike, he's just like, kind of like, okay, that's all I really need. And, you're kind of thinking he's probably getting his 5 million and piecing. Yeah. Obviously he doesn't want to stay there. He doesn't want to be harassed the rest of his life. So he's like, okay, I just need 24 hours, gather my things, get my money, which he thinks he's going to walk back into. Sure enough, he opens the garage door and no methylamine there. And you can imagine his frustration, pulls out his pistol right away. Walter and Jesse are in the back of the shop, and he's got it to Walter's head, and he's going to pull the trigger. Jesse's defending Walter, saying, wait, Mike, wait. Like, he's got a plan. Just wait. And it's this very Walter-esque scene where Walter's got a gun to his head. He kind of looks at Mike from the side and goes, everybody wins.
Right. Yeah, it's such a cocky thing. He's had his gun to his head so many times now. He just doesn't seem to care.
No, it doesn't faze him one bit.
And that's really how the episode ends. So basically what we know is that they plan to have for Mike to get his 5 million, get out, and for Jesse and Walter to stay on, because Walter basically guilt tripped Jesse into staying, saying, my children aren't here anymore. My wife hates me. You're going to take the one thing I have out of my life, the meth business.
Pretty pathetic when you think about
really
it.
Pathetic.
Right?
Like, the only thing I got left is this illegal business that might kill you and me, but please don't leave me with nothing. But Jesse loves Walter. He does. And Walter's a really shitty person, but Jesse said has a huge heart. Jesse at his core is a very good person. I mean, he's killed Gail. He's killed people. He's done things that you shouldn't do, but he cooked meth at the beginning of the show, but he's not a bad person at his core. He's just down a bad path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's hard to believe. I keep thinking about the time when you told me that Jesse was supposed to be basically a few episoder, and then he was pretty much diced from the show. And here he is, this probably multi-millionaire, recognized as an A-list actor from, just being on this show alone. So yeah, interesting, great episode. It's funny how this episode ends the same way we started with last week, basically with Walter having this genius plan on how to get these guys their meth, and now how to basically keep them in the meth business. So we're looking forward to watching the next 2 episodes and everything that entails. I think that the show is in a great spot. Obviously, like we said, we had a big checkpoint in this heist that happened in episode 5, and it only gets a lot better from here. So we're really excited to watch the rest.
Yeah. It only gets more interesting from here. Questions arise. Does Mike get out? What happens with him? Todd, Jesse and Walter, should they get out? I mean, the DEA is hot on their heels, so lots to be uncovered. Shay, I wanted to ask you about a film coming out. I know we talked last month multiple times about all the movies I wanted to see. Got to none of them. I'll be honest, haven't watched a complete movie since September.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's been a minute for me. However, there is a movie I'm going to see. I will watch the entire thing. I swear, because I have to. I am beyond. I'm not going to say excited because I hate that word. I am intrigued by the House of Gucci film that is coming out Thursday evening, and I really hope it's good.
Yeah, me too. I didn't think we mentioned this before, with Lady Gaga and Star is Born. Was she a one-hit wonder, or is she actually for real? I was told that she was so into this role that she actually had a hard time not speaking Italian, and the accent was so stuck with her that she couldn't just throw it away like most actors would, which I know just kind of shows their dedication to the flick. I'm really excited to see this too. If you ask me anything about Gucci, I know it's Gucci flip flops, so I really don't know a ton about it, but it looks like an unbelievable picture, and can't wait to see it. Does that mean you're gonna take a little trip on Thursday night, or?
Probably not Thursday, probably not this Friday either, because we got Thanksgiving this week, but I'm thinking a week from Friday is when I think I'm gonna say I'm going after work, gonna go matinee or afternoon Friday flick, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, amazing cast. The fact that Al Pacino is still acting at his age is a feat in and of itself. And yeah, Lady Gaga, she was, to her credit, she was great in The Star is Born. My only, not my critique, but my only opinion on it was she played a singer. She is a singer. So you played yourself. Way to go. So that's what you call a documentary. Michael Jordan was pretty good in The Last Dance, but but I'm intrigued to see her in this role. I think in the movie, she's married to Adam Driver, which is an interesting development. I know you're a big fan of him. But I think the cast is superb. And I think it's good. I just really hope it's a great film, because I started to do my research on the family, and boy, are they ever an interesting bunch. So I really hope the movie kills it.
Yeah, me too. If Pacino puts up a great performance, I mean, he's already an all-timer, and this will just prove that he's kind of ageless. Like, he's one of those guys that can do it all, kind of like a Clint Eastwood type actor, where it doesn't matter what age he is, he's going to be effective in whatever role.
Yeah, De Niro, The Irishman was a very good film, even with those guys at their elderly age. I have to ask, because I think you're going to say no to this, but you might have seen it, because you like to see bad movies for some reason, and I love you for it, but have you seen the film Red Notice?
No. Yes and no. I walked into other people watching it and kind of forced to watch it because it was what's on the TV. Yeah, no, it's if you could put Netflix movie into something where, we're gonna grab the big muscly, action hero and the good looking woman and the funny guy.
Yeah.
That was the movie, that what you're gonna get. It's crazy, but like obviously it's number one on Netflix. People are watching it because of who's in it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. There was one movie I wouldn't put you through. I might put you through a Fast and Furious movie, but I would not put you through this movie.
I'll watch any of the first four.
What, you mean you're not going to watch them go to space?
If I'm not watching Richard Branson go to space, I'm sure as hell I'm not watching The Rock or knock off The Rock, Vin Diesel go to space. Another thing I wanted to ask you about films is, this would be really sickening to me, and I think it would kill the franchise, and I mean this completely. I read this week that The Rock wants to be the next James Bond. I think this is a terror. If they choose him, number one, they're idiots, because he can't act. And Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery, they were all good actors, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And The Rock is great at what he does, being muscly and throwing people and, being jacked. But he's not James Bond. He doesn't have a British accent. Like Idris Elba should be the next James Bond, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even I thought about that the other day. And to your point, I don't want The Rock to be the James Bond. I just want my statement out there. But even Idris Elba, I don't think could do it. And here's why I say that. You need a James Bond who is not yet maybe in his prime, but not old in his 40s yet. You need someone who's in maybe their 30s, young 30s / mid 30s. 3-4 movies, just kind of spread it out. You don't want them all to be at this same decade, but you still want some length to them. If maybe there was 1 or 2 really good Idris Elba James Bond flicks, I wouldn't mind that either.
What about the guy from Peaky Blinders?
Cillian Murphy?
Yeah.
He maybe. If you've watched Peaky Blinders, Thomas Shelby's a role that's hard to mess with. I don't know if I'd be able to see him as a James Bond after seeing him as a Thomas Shelby, but his name has come up a lot. So is Tom Hardy's name, who's also in that show. So you never know. It just couldn't be someone who's American.
They're pitching Tom Hardy as James Bond.
Oh yeah, his name has come up there a few times.
God. I mean, the franchise isn't that good, so I shouldn't care. But I mean, Sean Connery.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put this Timothy Chalamet kid in there. He seems to be in everything now. So if they throw him in there and make him do a British accent, I wouldn't be too surprised.
He's such a hard one because I don't even know if he's a good actor. He's just
me neither. I watched a couple flicks and he's okay, but like people are Google-eyed over him, and I don't know. Yeah,
and just because you're in a lot of movies doesn't mean you're a good actor. I think that's another thing. Like The Rock is in a lot of movies. He stinks.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
Like if Leo was younger, I could see him being James Bond.
Yeah, exactly. Even if he did rock the American accent, he'd be still good in that role.
Yeah, because I think or here's another one before we wrap today. Better series, James Bond or Jason Bourne?
Oof. I'm biased because you're going to probably think I'm an idiot. I've not watched all the Jason Bournes. I've watched probably half of them. I do like them. But I like the charisma and the kind of the cockiness of Bond more than I do Jason Bourne.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to say Jason Bourne because my father will never let me in the house again. I've watched those films too many times with him. Like it's almost at an insane level. And my mother hates Jason Bourne more than any other human, even though he's not real. Like I think she thinks he is, and she hates that guy.
Yeah, if she saw Matt Damon, she might punch him just because.
And I he's a good janitor. He's in some other flicks. He's pretty good, but those are two interesting.
We could get into that. That could be another matchup, maybe like a Jason Bourne / James Bond, like the comparisons of each of them.
Yeah, that would be fun because both series, I'm sure people would be like, aren't that great? But I mean, I'd love to watch them both and kind of have a breakdown. So maybe that's something in To the Point future to look at these two series and obviously have one American and a big British franchise. So any plans for us this week? Any show that you're really into right now other than BB?
Just started Succession actually. It's on Crave now, so I've been checking out that this weekend. Really, really good so far. Really interesting characters. The plot is nothing crazy, but the characters make the show for sure. So that's been really good. But other than that, I don't have a ton going on. I'm gonna be home, maybe watch some Ranger hockey. I haven't seen them in a little bit, but no. Other than that, keep watching my Leafs win hockey games. That's kind of just a given now. But what do you do, my friend? What do you? Yeah, well, I mean, you got to win the regular season before you can win the playoffs. So
that's true. That's true. What's on the go for me? Like I said, just watch some sports as that's groundbreaking.
I still bother me that you haven't watched a full flick since September. I'm
telling you, I haven't. Like, it's honestly sad, but I
But you'll watch Buffalo and Arizona in the Sunday afternoon.
I will watch Buffalo and Arizona. Yeah, that is sickening. But yeah, I've watched multiple Buffalo games this year. And I actually watched Arizona and LA the other night for a period. So I have problems. Yeah, watch some sports. Like I said, work. Maybe, like I said, I want to get to that flick. So I'm going to watch it. That's a given. Plan on never watching Red Notice. That's still in my archives. And I do want to rewatch season 3 of Ozark before the next season starts. That's another task I have. So I want to be refreshed come January 21st when part 1 of season 4 comes out, which I just can't wait.
Oh, they're doing parts. I didn't even know that.
Parts.
So it's
yeah. It's
so is it parts like part?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
So I think it's like say 7 episodes and then 6 or something like that. So
okay,
it's a longer season. I think it's 4. It might be 7 and 7. I think there's 14 episodes in the last season. So yeah, big last season. But I know you got into the show. I love it. The acting is phenomenal. But yeah, no, your Leafs on the West Coast, it always gives me joy when Leafs fans complain about going on the West Coast with the 11 o'clock starts. That's always a good week for me. And but I'm sure you'll stay up for a period or two tomorrow night.
Probably just watch the highlights. Yeah, not getting up there, not staying up that late to get up that early. No, that's not the motto. Maybe this weekend if I'm up, having a pop, maybe I'll watch a couple periods.
Right.
But I mean they're red hot, but we'll see. Doesn't mean that those West Coast teams can cool them down.
No, absolutely. Well, great show today, man. We'll be in touch this weekend with you back in the GTA, and we'll talk again next week.
All right, thanks. Take care, my guy.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the Breaking Bad coverage tonight, and also the great debates about James Bond. And if you have anybody you want to throw in the mix, leave us a note in the comments, and we'll talk about it next week. But until then, take care, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.